My manager cut my overtime pay without giving me a single cent.
I didn't say anything.
At the end of the month, I submitted a complete record to HR, time logs, emails, everything. The next day, that same manager was sitting in front of me, apologizing. That moment didn't feel big. It wasn't loud or dramatic. No raised voices, no slammed doors. Just a receipt. A cheap dollar store receipt, slightly crumpled at the edges, showing the last $3.47 I had spent. Milk, eggs, and a small notebook for my son's school. I held it in my hand longer than I needed to, staring at the faded ink like it might tell me something new. And for the first time in days, I felt a strange kind of calm, because there was nothing left to count. That week, I had been counting everything. Pennies, dollars, every small purchase, every decision. And in the middle of that same week, my manager had cut my overtime like it meant nothing. Like it was just a number. Not hours. Not effort.
Not me.
I should have seen it coming. He had done things like this before, small adjustments, quiet changes that no one questioned. And most of the time, I didn't either. It wasn't worth the trouble. Not when you still had something left in your account, or some breathing room to fall back on. But this time was different. This time, there was no cushion. No backup plan. No extra shift to make up the difference. Just me, trying to stretch what little I had left. That morning, I dropped my son off at school like always. I packed his lunch, a peanut butter sandwich, a small apple, and a juice box, and watched him as he got out of the car. He paused before closing the door, his small face serious in a way that didn't belong to a child. "Are we okay?" he asked. I smiled automatically.
Yeah.
"We're fine." But we weren't. Not really. At work, everything felt the same, but also not. The hum of computers, the quiet tapping of keyboards, the low conversations between coworkers. Routine. Normal. Except it wasn't. I walked up to my manager's desk and stood there for a second before speaking. "Hey, about my overtime." He didn't even look up from his screen. "It got adjusted." "Adjusted?" I repeated, unsure if I had heard him right.
"Yeah."
"Budget cuts." I waited, thinking he might say more. "Explain."
"Clarify." He didn't.
"Those were hours I worked," I said carefully. He shrugged, still not meeting my eyes. "Talk to payroll." And just like that, it was over. No argument. No explanation. No acknowledgement. That was the moment. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet. Just enough. I didn't push back. Not there. Not in front of him. I went back to my desk and sat down, staring at my screen for a long time. The work in front of me blurred unimportant. Instead, I started counting. Not money this time, but time. Hours I had stayed late. Emails I had sent after closing. Messages where he had asked me to stay a little longer or just finish this one thing. I opened old files, digging through weeks of records. Everything was there because I always saved everything. Every email. Every login. Every shift. Maybe part of me had known this day would come. That night, I made dinner at home. Something simple, pasta with canned sauce. It wasn't much, but it was enough. My son sat across from me, twirling his fork. "Mom, can we go to Target this weekend?" he asked. I placed his plate in front of him and forced a small smile. "We'll see." He nodded, but I could tell he understood more than I wanted him to. The house was quiet after dinner. Too quiet. That night, I didn't try to sleep. I worked. Not the kind of work I got paid for, but the kind that mattered more in that moment. I gathered everything, organized it, checked and rechecked.
Timesheets.
Clock-in records. Emails. Screenshots. This wasn't emotional. It wasn't about anger or revenge. It was a calculation. The next morning, I sent a single email to HR. No long explanation. No dramatic story. Just facts. Attachments included. The subject line was simple: overtime discrepancy, documentation attached. I stared at the screen for a second before clicking send. And then, for the first time in days, I took a deep breath. Slow. Steady. The rest of the day passed quietly. He didn't come by. Didn't say anything. It was like nothing had happened. Like everything was normal. But it wasn't. The next morning, I got a reply. Can you come in for a meeting? I went. No expectations. No assumptions.
Just ready.
When I walked into the room, he was already there. My manager. For the first time in a long time, he looked at me directly. No screen. No distractions.
Just me.
HR started speaking. We've reviewed your records. I stayed quiet. Everything matches. The room fell silent for a few seconds. Then he spoke. Slowly. Look,
He stopped.
And for the first time, he didn't seem sure of what to say. I'm sorry. The words felt strange. Not because they were unfamiliar, but because I had never expected to hear them from him. I didn't realize, he continued, trailing off. I didn't interrupt. Didn't react. I just listened. HR stepped in again. You'll be compensated for all the hours. I nodded. That was it. The meeting didn't last long. There was no big scene. No dramatic resolution. But something had shifted. When I walked out of that room, I felt lighter. Like a weight I hadn't fully noticed before had finally been lifted. On my way home, I stopped and bought a coffee. A small one. $2.15. I didn't overthink it. Didn't calculate what else that money could be used for. I just stood there and drank it slowly. This wasn't a big win. It didn't fix everything. But it was mine. That week, I stopped counting pennies every single night. At least not as much. A few days later, my son asked again, Can we go to Target? This time I smiled and meant it. Yeah, I said. We can. Things weren't perfect. Work was still the same. The people hadn't changed. But I had. I had learned something important. Silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. And sometimes the quietest move changes everything. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine.